magnificent Midwest, it's the Suzanne Venker Show, where men and women are equal in value but wildly different by nature. Join us here every week as we challenge the culture's hugely flawed narratives about men, women, sex, and love. From coast to coast and from around the world, thank you for joining us. So I'm covering a very delicate but important topic today, and that's porn. I had planned on discussing this subject for a while now, but I was waiting for the right guest because I'm really not the right person to cover this topic on my own. However, I do need to address it because I have had a handful of single clients who talk about what a big issue porn is with men today. And I've had married clients whose husbands either watch porn or who were at one point addicted to it, and they feel that it is affecting their sex life. So you might say I've stumbled upon America's porn crisis. I just didn't want to address it by myself. So then I found the person I wanted to talk to. His name, or rather his brand, is King David, and he is the world's only quit porn strategist. David is a young man with a big dream: to burn down the $97 billion worldwide porn industry, one man at a time. Pretty audacious, I'd say. Makes my work seem easy. David's history with porn dates to his teenage years and before. Though he's out of his teens now, every year more young men are still discovering the world of porn, and David wants to help them find the exit. His website is enroll, E-N-R-O-L-L, enroll.quitpornstrategies.com. Welcome to the show, David.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Suzanne.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And it's great to have you here, I should say. I have to say, right off the bat, I am really impressed with you. I discovered you from my friend Will, and I think that for those of you who are listening, a couple of weeks ago, I had Will Spencer on. So if you have, and he has a website called The Renaissance of Men. And if you missed that podcast episode, it's not that long ago, so you can find it when we're done with this one. But he has a podcast as well, and that's where I found you, David. And as I said earlier, I've been wanting to cover this topic, this so important, so sensitive, so I hope what will be helpful, a podcast episode on porn. And when I heard your interview with him, and just to warn anybody if they want to go back and listen to David in his podcast with Will, it's 4 hours long. So just have a heads up there. This is not going to be nearly that long. But okay, so let's just start, David, by telling people your story. You started so young with all of this. So how long were you watching porn? What happened when your parents caught on? Just tell us just the gist of the story of who you are and how you got here.
Yeah, so the gist of the story, well, first, the formal introduction. My name is, I go by King David. My name is David, and I am the world's only quit porn strategist. I help men end their porn addiction in 30 days or less, and I will be the one who holds the match that burns the porn industry to the ground. Ambitious, I know. How am I going to do it? We haven't gotten that far yet. But yeah, so as far as my story goes, I first saw porn, or at least pornographic images, around the age of 9. And at that time, it was just exploring wallpaper apps for an iPod Touch. And as you know, on apps, you can see the app previews. And one way or another, I found wallpaper apps that were explicit or pornographic in nature. Now, the previews themselves were not explicit, but as a 9-year-old dude, right, you're seeing essentially women's breasts all out with just stickers covering their nipples. I mean, not much else is left to the imagination at that point, but seeing something like that for the first time was exciting, arousing, and then also very confusing because body is responding in a way that, was not explained to me at such a young age. So 9 years old was the first time seeing anything.
Let me stop you right there, David. Sorry. So what
no worries.
What did you type in, or how did you land there?
I don't remember specifically what was typed. I think it was just a matter of looking for wallpapers for an iPod, and one way or another, there was one that had an attractive woman on the app icon, and I would have clicked it and scrolled down to the wallpaper previews and
So
thought, "Oh man, what is this?"
instantly, like any kid.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And did you have a computer? Was it we had for many years a rule that there can be any machines in anybody's bedroom. So we have 2 kids, my husband and I, and we're now empty nesters. So they're grown, but there was only one. You'd have to be on the first floor of the house so everybody could kind of see what they were doing. So was that not the case in your house?
We had a computer room, but that was where Dad would do his work. And it's not like, I would play games online. Well, not online. I'd play old school. You put the disc in the computer, you download the game. So I wasn't online an awful lot. I think around that time I might have had, no, I don't actually think I had a DS around that time at all. So it would have just been, it was actually my younger brother's iPod, interestingly enough. And I was just scrolling through things, looking at it, and lo and behold, innocently, like you said, stumbled across borderline pornographic content. And then from there, it escalated to the point where realized I can type in, boobs or whatever it was in YouTube. And again, it wasn't explicit content, or at least I don't remember it being explicit on YouTube. But fair warning, you can find pornographic content on just about any platform, even if it says it doesn't allow nudity, because people will post things and it'll go under guidelines, or it gets taken down. But I remember finding full-blown porn on Instagram closer to the age of 16, but we'll get there sooner or later. But yeah, at the age of 9, no TVs in the room, no computers in the room, all wired up so I had to be in a specific part of the house. So having the iPod, which was connected to the internet and had no restraints or parental controls that I can remember there being on there. But that's the tricky part, right? Is parents are not thinking that their young kids are going to seek out porn. And the truth is your young kids aren't going to seek it out, but they're going to stumble on it one way or another.
Okay.
It's inevitable, right? If you want to, the social media algorithms, one of the first things they're going to push is going to be attractive people. And that is just naturally going to funnel to more explicit, more provocative content. And then sooner or later, your curiosity is going to get the best of you. And then you're going to be turning to Google Images and you're going to get the full picture, which is eventually what happened.
So keep going. So you're exposed to it for the first time around 9, and then take us from there.
Right. So first exposed to it around 9. I think the first time being caught would have been, let me think, around 11 or 12 years old. And at that time, I think it was just parents checking internet browser history for one reason or another. And the gist of the conversation being, don't do that again. And of being raised by parents that are more on the strict side, there was a healthy fear of, okay, I'm not going to do that again. But as time went on and the threat of punishment kind of just disappeared naturally, the curiosity was then stoked again. And next thing I know, I'm looking at more explicit content. And when I say explicit, I don't mean because of the nature of porn, right? And I've talked about this plenty of times prior. With a porn addict, the same content that you first looked at is not going to be the content that you're addicted to. So, but even at that time, 12, 13 years old, whatever it was still essentially just photos of bare-breasted women. Nothing too extreme, but nothing that a 12, 13-year-old boy should be looking at anyways.
And we're going to have to get somewhat not graphic necessarily, but specific here.
Right.
At what point did it graduate from just seeing it and then being so enticed by it, you're actually doing something about it?
Probably. Without being too graphic, but also communicating, I don't think I would have masturbated to pornographic images probably closer until 13, 14 years old. Would have probably masturbated to thoughts of the photos, but for whatever reason, there was not a connection to, you mean I can masturbate while I look at the photos? I don't think that realization, if you will, happened until later, a little bit later down the road. And not too much later, only about a year or two later. But it
And
would have
plus
been
you'd have
thinking
to,
about the images and then fantasizing over them and then masturbating to them without looking at the content. And it's probably just because, there was, I'm not going to bring the device into the bathroom just because
right. Right.
either wasn't allowed to or would not have thought to do so.
And if you did think to do so, it would be really obvious what you're doing, or why would you have a computer in there?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, before I go back and start to really get into this, go ahead and finish your story in terms of where you got to where you are now, and then we'll kind of go backwards from there.
Yeah, no worries. So 13, 14 years old, I was I can't remember if that was the worst of it, but I do know that I was looking at it quite frequently, if not once a day, sometimes even multiple times per day. And there were times, where I would sit on the family couch and I would be browsing through photos. I wouldn't be doing anything while looking at the photos, but I was ballsy enough to do that in the presence or in the close proximity of family members. Around that time also probably was caught again and, told like, hey, you're not allowed to be on the internet. And if you're going to be on the internet, it's going to be on the computer, and the computer screen is going to be facing in a direction that mom and dad are able to see. Because up until that point, it all would have taken place on the iPod, an old phone, or even on the internet browser on my 3DS back in the day. So it was very easy to be secretive about it and hide that. I can't remember what specifically led up to being caught, but I will say, women have killer intuition, and I think part of it was just mom suspecting, hey, something's going on and we need to look into it. And dad being more hesitant and like, come on, he's not going to be looking at anything. Lo and behold, I was. So getting caught, then getting punished, and there was no communication about that. There was no walking me through why I'm responding to those photos in that regard. It was just what you're doing is wrong and equating it to a sin, and you're going to be punished so that you don't do it again. I do not have kids, but I do know that when I do have them, the extent of what I'll do, and I'll talk much more openly about porn. I'll let them know, like, hey, porn is out there. I'll have a very direct conversation, and I mean direct in a way that they'll be able to understand. But I know I'm not going to wait until 12, 13 years old to talk to my kids about it. I'm going to be having that conversation much, with them when they're much, much younger, probably maybe even closer to 7 or 8, because right now the statistics say the average age that boys are exposed to porn, the average age is 12, but it's either 10 or 20% of individuals first saw porn around the age of 6. And I've actually worked with a man who's 26 years old, and his first time seeing porn was 6 years old, and then it spiraled into an addiction from there. So being 26 with a 20-year long porn addiction, I've worked with men who are 30, 40, and their porn addiction is 20 years long. But, he's doing much, much better now as a result of the coaching or whatnot. But I bring that up more as an anecdote. And I will have this conversation with my kids at a much, much younger age and much, much sooner than many people would assume or even recommend to have that conversation. So 15 to 16 still would have been, venturing into porn. I think around that time, I probably would have started watching porn videos for the first time. So it was always just images or photos or stills or whatever. And the reason why was because, I am religious. I am a Christian. And I knew what I was doing was wrong. So I didn't want to fully engross myself in it. So I refrained from looking at the videos for as long as I could until the novelty or the Coolidge effect took over and was like, hey, you need to look at a little bit more to get the same level of arousal or excitement or dopamine out of that experience. So 16 years old, I also would have started sexting for the first time, which that thrill in and of itself was unmatched compared to porn because it was actually interacting with a woman, or as far as I could tell, a woman. I do know I had been catfished once or twice, probably more than that in the past, but that's what happens when you turn to not chat sites. It was an app called Whisper, and I'm sure there are still horny people on Whisper trying to send nudes, get nudes, and a lot of the time with people that are underaged, whether or not both parties are underaged. So 16, 17 would have been caught up in sexting and watching porn. I remember there were instances where I would stay up late because I was at least smart. I say smart lightly.
Yeah.
When I was in the habit of sexting, there was no way in hell I was going to do that with people that were locally. There was a reputation to uphold at least. So I would turn to chicks that lived, on the other side of the world or the other side of the state. So there were times where I'd be up until 2, 3 in the morning, exchanging nudes and nude videos with chicks. And then in absence of waiting for the photo, I was turning to porn or Pornhub in between. So it would be chatting someone up, watching porn, getting photos from them, watching porn, sending photos of myself, watching porn, getting photos of them, so on and so forth.
Okay, I'm gonna pause right there for a second. So you said you're around 16 at this point?
Yeah, 16 or 17.
And so
it started at 16, yeah.
Okay, and then was the majority of this, I mean, I would imagine it would have had to have been at 2 in the morning?
Yeah, later in the evening.
10 in the evening?
I mean, I was homeschooled, so there were a few times that, it would happen earlier in the day, but that would be on the contingency that the person I was messaging was either going to sleep in their time zone or had a day off or something, just because of school or whatnot.
The reason I'm asking is because I'm just wondering what was going on with your parents at this point? Wouldn't there have been signs?
They would have been asleep. And because the last time I got caught, I was punished. I got better at hiding it.
Yeah, but are there any other signs aside from catching you in the act that would be evident? Like the first thing I'm thinking of when you're saying this, having just
right
kids, is that you'd be really tired the next day because you were up in the middle of the night doing something.
Well, with my homeschooling schedule, I was not required to wake up at a given time. So it was pretty routine that I would be waking up closer to 9, 10 anyways. So the fact that I was going to bed so late was not much of a hindrance on, school or performance. And so I wouldn't have really been waking up tired anyways, because it was waking up at my expected time. Because if I wasn't watching porn, then I was probably just looking at memes, to be honest. It was either porn or memes. Sometimes it was memes more than porn, but
You mean sexual memes?
No, just normal memes, just funny memes.
Okay.
It was either funny memes or porn.
Okay, so keep going. Then what happened?
17 years of age, I would have realized that it was becoming a problem. And not just that, like, I always knew that it was a sin, but a problem in the sense that it was happening, either, like I said, either once a day or multiple times per day. And even to the point where there were times where I would skip. Like, I remember vividly, there was one time family was going to go to the pool, and I loved going to the pool on a hot summer day, but I was in the middle of sexting with someone. So I skipped on going to the pool so I could, stay home and do that. So I realized, and that's a classic sign of addiction, is when something is then interfering with your normal life. And I mean, sure, the whole staying up super late, that would be indicative of interfering with normal life, but staying up late, whether I was watching porn, playing video games, or looking at memes, was my normal life. That was me functioning normally at that time. So it wasn't until I realized, like, oh, I'm like doing this when I should be with friends or with family members, that I started to realize that I had a problem. And then, of course, at the age of 17, realizing that you can't get an erection unless you're looking at porn is also indicative of it being a problem. So I, effectively had erectile dysfunction at a very, very young age, and that's not supposed to happen. Like, that's not supposed to happen at all. Under no healthy circumstances should a 17-year-old boy have erectile dysfunction.
No, of course not.
So I would have started to, Google what does porn do to the brain, and I would have started to research what's going on and how it's interfering with the reward systems, how it's making structural changes to the gray matter in your brain, and then even the concept of addiction itself. And of course, you're thinking of addiction and you're wrestling with the fact that, oh, well, addiction usually means that you're turning to a drug or you're turning to a substance, and nobody is going to look at porn as a drug. And yes, you have platforms like Fight the New Drug that are explicitly addressing porn as a drug. I personally will tell you that porn is a drug, but if you're to Google whether or not porn is a drug or take to any search engines, you're going to get the research is going to be inconclusive. You'll have some people that will say porn addiction is real, and then you'll have other people say that porn addiction is not real. So there's no conclusive, hard set answer that says porn addiction is real. So there was that doubt and that wrestling where it's like, okay, well, I'm looking at photos, I'm looking at videos, and not fully comprehending what an addiction is at that age even. But then also just it's not common knowledge. It's not talked about. It was not talked about. It wasn't talked about in the churches that I was going to. And if it were addressed, it would be addressed in the extent of saying, looking at lustful images online. Everyone knows that's porn, but that's still beating around the bush and you're not being direct about the issue.
Well, and if you had to, and we'll get to this later, but you said you had to rewire your brain essentially. And so anytime you're rewiring your brain, you are fixing something that it could be very easily labeled an addiction or something that's gone awry in your thinking and in your behavior.
Right. Well, and that's even, to touch into that wiring process is your brain is at baseline before you start to watch porn. And then when you start watching porn, you're going to be wiring it for an addiction, because porn and your brain's response to pornographic images and your brain's response to having an orgasm from masturbating to pornographic images is going to mimic the exact same circuitry that dopamine is, or it's going to mimic the exact same patterns that when an addict of a drug is engaging, they're getting dopamine, it's running through their reward circuitry. And the same exact things happen in the brain of a porn addict because it's based off of dopamine. And that's the tricky part is everyone, and this is one thing that I'm so adamant on talking about, is not just, if you want to get into the technicality of it, you're not addicted to porn, you're addicted to the insane amounts of dopamine that porn is giving you. Porn is a super stimulus in the sense that there is nothing else like it that is remotely close to the level of dopamine that you're getting while you're watching it. And part of that is, you want to go way back and look at this from a primal level, where the fact is your brain, like I said, on a primal level, it exists to serve two purposes: for you to stay alive and for your genes to stay alive, for you to procreate and have kids. So when you eat food, your brain is going to reward you with dopamine so that you know to eat more food in the future so you don't starve and die. So when you have sex, your brain is going to reward you with dopamine so that you have more sex so that your gene pool does not die off. So what's happening is in that primal brain, it's seeing a fertile, eligible woman and it's thinking we need to procreate so that our genes can stay alive. That's what's going to happen when you're looking at a real naked woman, and that's what's going to happen when you're looking at a pornographic image, so a naked woman on the other end of a photo. But you have to keep the Coolidge effect, novelty, which I touched on a little bit earlier when I mentioned I eventually evolved into looking at videos. So novelty, the Coolidge effect, is the fact that when you're looking at one porn image, you're getting dopamine from that singular image. And then the next image, you're getting more dopamine, and then more and more and more. So what ends up happening is no dude is going to find one photo and stick with it. He's going to look at hundreds, if not thousands of photos in a very quick period of time. And I can even recall from my personal experience, right? It was never just, unless it was a photo that I was really, really enjoying in that moment, I was scrolling through, constantly scrolling through, picking up new clips, new videos, new photos, new angles, anything. So more and more dopamine from that alone. So it's a super stimulus in that regard, because if we take this down to the level of just having sex, there's not nearly as much visual stimulus as compared to what you're going to get scrolling through thousands of
no, and we're going to come back to that. We're going to come to that because I want to focus on how porn affects relationships, which is kind of my whole thing. Okay, so just quickly sum up your story. So by age 20, you said you essentially gave porn up, right?
Yeah, at age 20.
A young age.
Yes.
Good. You got on it fast.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. No kidding. I tell dudes, that's one of my big things, is telling dudes, if you are young and single, then quitting porn should be your top priority in life, because you cannot evolve. You cannot become the man that you're supposed to be if you're wrestling with an addiction, and you're not going to become the man you're supposed to be if you're wrestling with a porn addiction. And one of the things that I talked about with Will Spencer on the podcast episode I did with him, and things that I talk about on my Twitter account, is how porn is going to affect you on an energetic level. And, I say this, porn addicts, you're not going to know what I mean when I say energy. You're not going to know what I mean when you're with a woman, or you're looking at a woman, or you're interacting with a woman, and you can feel your masculine energy. You can feel that attraction. You can feel that reciprocating with the woman that you're with. If you're addicted to porn, then you're not going to be able to dwell or project or even use your masculine energy because you're wasting it, because it builds up and then you turn to porn because you're feeling a certain way. And two, right? Like I'll tell people, you don't watch porn because you're horny. You watch porn because you're hurting.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is, think of it like this. There was at one point in time.
Say that. Wait a minute. I want you to stop. Hold on. Before you explain it, say that again.
Yeah, no worries.
I want to make sure everybody got that because it's really important. Say it again.
Yeah, absolutely. You do not watch porn because you're horny. You watch porn because you're hurting. And the reason I say that is, at one point in time, you turned to porn when you were stressed or when you were anxious or when you were depressed. And then you watched porn, you had an orgasm, so your brain rewarded you for that experience, and it realized, hey, we did this after we felt anxious or depressed. So you're reinforcing that habit. So one thing that I tell my clients and I tell people all the time is, when you get the urge to watch porn, you need to stop yourself and you need to ask, why do I feel this way? What is this urge coming from? What's at the root of this urge? And if you sit it, well, not, you don't have to literally sit, but if you sit and think for a second, why do you want to watch porn? It's never going to be, oh, well, I'm horny. Oh, it's because I want to have sex. I was talking to one of my clients today in our chat conversation. I was telling him, I was like, you need to ask yourself why you want to watch porn when you believe that it's because your sex drive is taken off right now. If you concentrate and if you practice awareness in those moments, you will realize that there's a difference between the want to watch porn, the desire to watch porn, and the desire to have sex. Those are two completely different feelings. I even wrote a tweet today talking about, you watch porn not because you're aroused, you watch porn because you want to be aroused.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing happens in the brain when you watch porn is the fact that the lateral orbital frontal cortex, which is responsible for logical thinking and rational decision making and response to emotions like fear and anxiety, that part of your brain is inhibited. It shuts down. So that's why when you're watching porn, you never have the thought, or you never act on the thought to click the red X button, despite the fact that you always can. I mean, porn is arguably the easiest substance, the easiest drug to completely cut yourself off of in the middle of experiencing the high, because it is literally just a click away, or you can shut the screen off, or you can close the laptop. There's nothing that's preventing you except for your own mind and your own logical awareness from watching porn.
Your the strategies or the description that you just gave of stopping yourself and asking yourself why and what are you looking for could literally be applied to any addiction.
Yes.
Absolutely. Whether it's alcohol, food, drugs, gambling. I don't know what else is there. It doesn't matter, because the whole purpose of the addiction is to take you out of your life and put you into another space to calm you and to escape. And so asking yourself why and getting to the root of that is where obviously the answer lies. But if you skip that step, you're just going to keep repeating it over and over and over again.
Right. Well, and one of the tricky parts with really any sex addiction or porn addiction is the fact that there's so much shame attached to it. So what ends up happening is, when men get the desire to watch porn, their instinct is to run from it. Their instinct is to go bust out a set of push-ups. Their instinct is to deny themselves to feel that way. And one thing that's important for people to realize, for men to realize, is, again, you are not watching porn because you're horny. You're watching porn because you're hurting. But to take that a step further, the desire to watch porn is not the desire to watch porn. It's the desire to escape. It's the desire to cope. And what's happening is, it's the desire to alleviate a buildup of negative emotional tension.
Yep.
And you turn to porn because it's a physical release. It's a release of physical tension. But what happens is, when you have the urge to watch porn and you tell yourself no, you're not just saying no to watching porn, you're saying no to allowing yourself to dive into those emotions and figure out what's causing that buildup. So you need to be very careful in that dialogue internally, you almost need to validate. And this is one thing that I tell my clients is when you get to the urge to watch porn, you almost need to tell yourself, yeah, I want to watch porn. And you could even tell yourself, yeah, I want to watch porn, because then you're allowing yourself to feel what's going on behind that. And then you want to dig in, like, why do I feel this way? Why do I want to watch porn? What's causing this urge? What's causing this desire?
And I don't know.
I guarantee you it's not going to be because you're horny.
I don't know if you mean literally saying that to yourself.
Oh, I actually mean
in your head.
I recommend that people
there's something that happens
when
you actually verbalize your thoughts. And none of us do that nearly often, or if ever. And when you do say out loud what you're thinking and feeling, wow, what a difference it makes. You feel kind of funny doing it, right, at first.
Yeah, absolutely. I have clients that tell me that all the time. And I teach them this in one of my quit porn strategies. It's called meta separation. And meta separation is the process of actively separating your thoughts from your, what I call the addict brain, which is the part of you that wants to watch porn and will do whatever it takes to watch porn, versus the sober mind, which is you, which does not want to watch porn. It wants to be done with it. So I tell them it's this way, and you can even think the sober mind, you're using meta separation to keep the lateral orbital frontal cortex on, because the easiest way to combat the urge to watch porn in that moment is going to be diving into it, and then it's going to be maintaining a logical awareness of the situation. Because if you can keep your logical awareness on, you're not going to go watch porn, or the likelihood of that happening significantly decreases. So with meta separation, I tell people you want to speak it out loud, because it's your sober mind speaking to your addict brain. It's vocalizing, it's manifesting that disconnect between those two sides of you. So
is this what you figured out for yourself then over time? And then
yes, meta separation is something that I came up with on my own. It's a mix up of a bunch of different other things. It's positive thought work. It's metacognition, thinking about thinking. It's also a little bit of what people do to treat OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, because all addiction is a form of obsessive compulsion, because the obsession is something that causes anxiety and the compulsion is something that you do irrationally that alleviates the anxiety caused by the obsession. And that's what all addictions are. So in my attempt to look at how to treat addiction, I found, how people treat OCD, and then I borrowed the concepts of the two of those things and meshed them together, and then effectively created meta separation. I believe if you go on and Google meta separation, you will find something about water, like filtering water. So it's my own discovery.
So let's talk about the meat of this, which is what I'm interested in. That's how porn affects marriage or relationships. Now, we were talking about this before we went on. I'm an old married lady, and you're a very young single guy, but that's okay, because I want your expertise in the porn area. And then I'm going to talk about what I'm seeing on my end with my clients, and then see if we can sort of come together with that and be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I'm even doing this episode is because I work pretty much primarily with millennials, not across the board, but maybe 80%. And I'm learning about porn pretty much through them, because us Gen Xers, just like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, basically growing up, I'd see a Playboy in my parents' house, or my dad's room or whatever, something, I guess, with my dad. And that was sort of normal in my day. And that's just so innocuous compared to this. So that's right. That's my only background at my age. But then I think I first saw some teenage boy put a porn on, and I'd walk through the room at a party and it was on, that kind of exposure. But actual engagement, of course, with it in this kind of prolific way was obviously the internet. And that's came much, much, much later. So millennials and younger have grown up with this. So years later, I'm getting them in their 30s, let's say, some of them. And if they're single, they are talking a lot about, men who engage in porn. And then if they're married, I have had several clients whose husbands either currently watch porn or have in the past, and they believe it is still affecting their relationship. And that gets into what you were alluding to earlier about really what the difference is between porn and an actual real relationship with a woman.
Right.
That's kind of obvious. This doesn't really require, I mean, it's just kind of obvious. But what Will, I noticed that Will asked when you guys talked on his podcast is because he engaged in porn for a spell when he was younger. And he said, real human sex is nothing like porn, of course, but how is a boy supposed to know that when the only thing modeled for him is its opposite? So when since you had experience from such a young age, did you, I don't know, it's so hard to imagine being a 9-year-old and being exposed to this. Did you think this is what sex was? I mean, how does a boy delineate between what they're seeing and like what their mom and dad do? Is it
Right.
sort of obvious?
That's
or not the same. What goes on in your head?
Right. That's the hard part about it is, that's the dark side of porn addiction, right? That's the tricky part with anything that we look at, we conceptualize, and we base our understanding or our perception off of something from an experience that's not ours, right? Is your brain, what I'm getting at is I know that I have thoughts and perceptions that linger in the back of my mind that are not right. But when, being a young guy, right, when the thoughts of sex or whatnot arise, the concepts in my mind, it's piecing together memories from porn. So my idea, because I'm a Christian, I'm saving myself until marriage, and I'm not just doing that because a book told me so. I'm doing that because I believe that is what is best for my soul, my spirit, and my energy as an individual is to wait. So because I don't have practical firsthand experience, my perceptions of sex is based off of what I've seen from porn.
Right.
So as a kid, as a young man, I don't recall that being an issue. I was not, actively unless I was on Whisper, I was not actively pursuing women or sexual relationships because that was wrong. Of course, watching porn and, sexting wasn't.
Oh, I see.
So it's tricky, but I touch on that, and I have not articulated this very well. It's something that I will be touching on in the future, just because I believe it's a little more esoteric. But it's the fact that, like I said, in my brain, there are things that I will visualize that is a memory of porn, but my brain thinks that is what sex actually is, because that's the only thing that it can draw on and what it can reference on. And of course, the damage there, right, is the fact that the best way, and according to how I believe and firmly believe, is the best way to experience sex is going to be in the marriage covenant, where you are safe to express and explore and figure that out. You're not supposed to be experienced, right? As the red pill
so let's
dive into.
So let me tell you exactly what I've been told. So you just have to kind of imagine this, and then, just talk about the porn and his brain and the addiction and the, what you do, which is to help people stop. You'll have to think about it from that angle, but it's hard for the women to feel like they're not being objectified by somebody who either is currently using porn or has in the past.
Right.
And they know that. And so they're not able, first of all, they feel that their man isn't able to connect to them. Right. And they always feel like a body instead of a human soul, like looking deeply in her eyes and connecting with her. Instead of it being something that's rote, that you're going through the motions and using the body. And that's serious business, because really once that's the then you're really not having intimacy or connecting. You might be having sex and going through the motions, but the closeness isn't there the way it's meant to be there. And that's why I'm sitting here with you right now and having this on, is to basically help tell the world how can a husband determine. First, he's got to work with you if he's addicted, obviously. But
yes, that's the go-to.
Yeah, that's the go-to. But let's assume it's in the past. or he thinks it is. How can a husband determine if he's done with it for good? And how can a wife know that that's true? I know this is kind of hard because you're not married, but I just mean it from like, what would a man do to hide? What would the signs be, I guess, kind of thing, so that the person can be confident that it's over? And does he have to go through a program like you offer to really be done? And would you question anybody who doesn't? Can it be done on their own, I guess is my question.
There are a lot of things that I want to address in there. Okay. One thing, I think you mentioned, the woman feeling objectified and like the man is just having sex. I think part of that is the fact that for a man, sex is an objective. It is more something that we do. It is more something that is pleasure driven. The individual that I've learned this from the best is at the Prometheus on Twitter. His name is Adam Lane Smith. He is a marriage and family psychotherapist. He's worked with tons and tons of people, but the thing that he talks about is women bond through the chemical release of oxytocin in their brains. Men bond through the chemical release of vasopressin in their brain. When a woman has an orgasm, it's going to flood her brain with oxytocin, which is going to pair bond her with the man that she just had sex with. When a man has sex, his brain is going to release predominantly dopamine, which is going to, reward him a job well done. It's also going to feel, both orgasm, experiences are going to feel like a high, but it's very different, right? This is why when a woman orgasms, she wants to cuddle and watch movies. And when a man orgasms, he wants to go eat food and go to sleep. So sex serves two different purposes. The ultimate goal, right, being connection, procreation, and pleasure. But it's two very different things for a man. And one thing that's tricky, and I noticed this with working with Christian clients, is the fact that they feel like it is inherently wrong when they are objectifying a woman. And at the end of the day, as a married man, you do want to look at your wife and want to have sex with her purely because you want to have sex with her.
And of course, for a second, and also know what works for her, not that woman that you saw on the screen where it's all fake, because whatever you think works on a woman physically probably doesn't, if that's your gauge for it.
Right. Yeah. There's so many. And that's the other thing, right? So women need to recognize that for a man, sex is more of an act, but men need to recognize that for a woman, sex is a connection. And I do know, right, there will be men that will be emotionally driven in that, and they will feel
it is connection for men. It is closeness.
So that intimacy is true on both ends, but especially for a man, one thing that he has to learn is that sex, it is supposed to be it's supposed to be a spiritual connection with that individual. So this is one thing that I help my married clients work through, is they'll think to themselves like, oh, well, I'll go out and I'll see women that are more attractive than my wife, but they know they're not going to cheat on their wife because they love their wife. And one thing that I'll tell them is, okay, so when you see a woman that is more physically attractive than your wife, one thing you need to remind yourself is that a lot of the attraction that you have towards your wife and the reason that you married her is not just because she's got a smoking hot bod, but it's because she's a good woman. She has the characters, the morale, the standards of which you admire and love her for, so that her personality, her intellect, her emotional being, and her spirituality also plays a very strong role in the attraction, but because your brain is so wired for porn. And this is the tricky nuance, right? Because I said you don't watch porn because you're horny, you watch porn because you're hurting, but the matter of the fact is porn is sexual in nature, so there's going to be sexual repercussions regardless of what the inherent reason for turning to it is. So one thing that I tell men is, like, when you see a woman that's more attractive physically than your wife, you need to remind yourself that you're also attracted to your wife because she loves you and you love her. And if you have children, if she's the mother of your kids and she's doing things that an attractive body is not going to do for you. So it's to really dwell and focus on that and to appreciate her as an individual. I've had clients where I'll tell them, it's like, you need to list out 5 things that you love about your wife that have nothing to do with her appearance. And if you're having issues in your relationship, go and speak those to her and tell her what you're appreciative of. And if your sex life is dwindling because there's a lack of connection, well, guess what? You go and you tell your wife what you're appreciative of her. she's probably want to go to Pound Town later.
I've never heard that phrase before.
Yeah, that's usually what I refer to with my clients. Like, when you guys go to Pound Town.
Pound Town. Oh my God, my husband's gonna love that one. That's funny. Okay. So would you agree with this statement then? If you are married and you think you have to think about porn.
Oh, if you have to think about porn
or
when you're having sex, then you have a problem.
During sex with your spouse, yeah. And
yes, then you have a problem.
Then you have 100%. A problem. So,
absolutely.
Okay, so that's a good gauge for all. Now, what do you say to couples who say, "Well, we just use it for fun together"?
I hate those couples. They're lying to themselves. They are not able to connect with one another, and it's probably the woman who is compromising in the fact that she doesn't want to watch porn, but she wants her man to be aroused, and because there's intimacy and emotional connectedness issues, she thinks that just the fact that she's receiving sex from him, that means that he is connected to her in that moment, and that's not the case. It's the woman is either compromising, or they both are, they're both, without being too mean about it, they both have issues and they're beating around the bush and not addressing those issues. Mm-hmm. No, you're not watching porn because it enhances your sex life. And one of the reasons why they're going to believe this is because they're being programmed by the new studies that are coming out that say porn is healthy. Porn is good for your brain. Porn is good for your relationships. No, that is that's new thinking to justify a problem and also to feed the giant that is the porn industry. They're making $96 billion globally every single year. So of course these studies, and then you have people that think that studies are unbiased. All studies have a bias, guys. Come on.
For sure. And I'm going to read the same statistics that Will did that I wrote down here, because I know that your goal is to burn down the porn industry, which is a very lofty goal.
Oh, I know.
I was telling everybody at the beginning that makes my work look like a piece of cake, and I thought mine was lofty. Okay. I'm going to read these statistics first, just to give everybody an idea of what we're talking about here. And then I'm going to talk about what's happening with women, unmarried women, and what they're experiencing, because this totally shocked me as well. In 2020, 50% of 11 to 13-year-olds, 65% of 14 to 15-year-olds, and 78% of 16 to 17-year-olds reported having seen pornography in some way. According to another survey in 2020, 38% of women under the age of 40, so that makes the millennials. Millennials are now 25 to 40. Under 25 is my kids' generation, which are Generation Z, have experienced unwanted, I'm going to say that again, 38% of women under 40 have experienced unwanted slapping, choking, gagging, or spitting during consensual intercourse. And I have to say, not to sound completely out of touch, but I mean, I just can't even conceive of anybody our age, my age, relating in any way, shape, or form to this. This sounds so bizarre. It's like from another world. And as somebody who doesn't consume porn, is that the norm in porn?
Yes.
And
yes, that's the norm.
Like all of those things are part of porn. Because in my day, if you saw something, like I said, on your way in a party that, on TV or whatever, it was people having sex, but none of that. So it's just graduated, I guess, over 40 years. 40 years. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. I must be really out of touch.
I mean, you don't have to look too hard to find, pornos that are rape. And whether or not it's planned rape or actual rape, no one really knows. It's all up to the creators of the video. And of course, there are videos up there that are just straight out sexual assaults and videos of actual rape that is actually happening. And this all ties back to the Coolidge effect, where the fact that the normal stimulus that your brain was used to, it requires more. Because what's happening, and this is what happens with all addiction, is the dopamine is going to run through the mesolimbic dopaminergic reward system, or just the reward system. And each time the dopamine runs through it, your brain is going to withdraw or take back some of the dopamine receptors because it's too much dopamine. So what ends up happening is, as opposed to what the norm for drugs is, you need more of it. With porn, you don't just need more of it, you need different. You need more exciting. You need more extreme content. So this is why I'll tell people, you start off with the vanilla titty pics, And next thing you know, you're watching the weird, what are you doing, step bro? Or anything, German dungeon porn, for crying out loud. And what happens is with these men is they know logically they're not attracted to these things. But that's the porn they have to turn to because that's what arouses them. That's what gets them to the level of excitement that they need to experience so they can have an orgasm and climax and reach that reward at the end of the day. So that's why that explains the statistic there. And it's also just a matter of the fact that people are not going to assume that one of the components of a healthy sex life is communicating. There is no communicating in porn. Nobody's talking about, oh, do this because it feels good. It's just one person is doing one thing and the other person is responding to it. And then there's the matter of the fact that you're looking at porn that is specific to a genre or a fetish or a kink where it's just assumed that both parties are enjoying it. So what ends up happening is you take your understanding of sex, your preconceptions of it, and you're applying that to actually engaging in the act, and you're just assuming, oh, well, I watch videos where the chick's getting choked out, so I assume that my partner is going to like that. And because in the video, the man does not ask, hey, do you like being choked? He's not going to ask that in real time when he is having sex with someone. He's just going to assume that is what is acceptable, and he's going to act out on it. And like I said prior, again, to reiterate, one of the most important components and aspects of a healthy sex life is going to be communicating with your partner. There is no communicating in porn. No communicating in porn.
That's a really good, important distinction. And that goes back to what I was saying before, is that that's how these women are feeling, that they're just a body. They're just a body. There's no soul, there's no connection, and there's no communication. Communication is an important word. It's a key word. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
One thing that I want to touch on, you asked this a little earlier and I didn't get to address it, so I want to speak on it now, is this is more so for women who are in a relationship with a man that has a porn addiction. One thing, and it's so hard to grasp this unless the woman has a porn addiction or struggles with porn, which unfortunately is becoming more and more common as time goes on. 1/3 of all porn viewers are women. Which is shocking, I know, but that's what's happening. The advice that I have, and again, it's hard to wrap your head around this, but he is not watching porn because you lack something. He's not watching porn because he doesn't think you're attractive. He's not watching porn because the porn stars have something that she doesn't have or anything like that. He's turning to porn predominantly out of the chase for dopamine, and because he does not know how to handle his emotional well-being. He doesn't know how to deal with stress. He doesn't know how to deal with anxiety. He doesn't know what to do when he feels depressed. Because one way or another, the men's self-help, the men's improvement, what we call the manosphere, or what I referred to with Will on his podcast, which is a much better name, the Renaissance of Men.
I know, I love it.
We've done a great job at bringing awareness to the masculine self-improvement journey, but there are still deficits in dealing with your emotions in a masculine way, because emotional stability and control over your emotions is one of the hallmarks of a masculine man, but it's still discouraged. So what happens in a relationship is the woman is going to experience, because it's sexual in nature, this is where it gets tricky. This is why there's so much nuance to porn addiction. He's watching porn because he doesn't know how to deal with his emotions, not because he doesn't think you're attractive. Because I've had men who have healthy sex lives with their wives, but after having sex, they will then get the urge to go watch porn. Well, you ask yourself, why must this be? It's because they want more dopamine. And that's one thing that I have to help my clients through as well, is it's just, there's so much. It's so mental. But that's my biggest piece of advice for women, is understand that a man is not turning to porn because you lack something. And I've had married clients before, and one in particular. Yes, the addiction, it causes issues in a relationship, as all addictions do. But his wife was so sick and tired of him dealing with porn and not being understanding of the issue, that she was not supporting him through it, instead degrading him through the process, where homie just, broke down in tears on the call because he was struggling, he was hurting, and his wife was neglecting that and not showing any compassion, any support, and just sick and tired of it and wanted him to be done with it.
And
which is terrible.
It is terrible. And I think I wonder if there's a way to think of it in terms of, for the woman whose husband is either currently struggling or has in the past, and you think it's still affecting it or whatever. It's really no different from being married to an alcoholic, or in this one respect, in terms of, except that it's sexual and so it affects you and it involves you. I mean, so it's massively different on that end. But I mean, in terms of conceptually, that you do those things, drink, eat, watch porn, gamble, you do those things, just like you said, because you're not in control of your emotions and you need something to do with them. And that means it isn't connected or related to the person you're married to. But of course,
right.
with the porn piece, it involves you having sex with the person, whereas the alcohol doesn't. So it's really interesting because the underlying problem is the same. It's just the manifestation is different.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah, and it's as far as, married men that may have had a porn issue in the past affecting the relationship, it's going to come. It will really come down to his perception of sex and what he is turning to sex for, what he's looking to get out of it. I mean, that's going to come down to communicating, asking some hard questions, and really just diving into it. Like, if the wife feels like, I feel like I'm just an object when we're intimate, then, express that, have that conversation. And again, part of that's going to be understanding that for men and women, sex is different. It's fundamentally different. Mm-hmm. But yeah. I mean, you guys got to communicate, which I'm sure is a lot of what you do, is encouraging healthy communication. And that's something that I've done with my married clients, is to encourage that healthy communication. One thing that I've learned through the process of coaching that I did not think would be beneficial is, well, there's a trade-off. You don't want your accountability partner to be your wife, but I have married clients that have done this and they've seen benefits in their sex life and in their marriage. I guess I preface this. I don't exactly recommend that people use a streak tracker where it's like, oh, I've gone without porn for 7 days, because when they relapse, they feel like they're starting over, which then causes them to binge, which makes the problem even worse. But I have seen some couples where the wife will have the streak tracker on her phone as well, so she knows it's been this long since he's watched porn. And that will allow her to realize he's not looking at other women. He is looking at me, and he wants me, and it's been this long since he's seen or done or whatever it may be, which can help to encourage connectedness, or at the very least help her connect to him. Again, I don't always recommend that, just because, like I said, for the men, the streak tracker can be a terrible idea, because they may reach their longest without it, and they may have a relapse, and then they may feel like absolute garbage, and then the shame from that will cause them to relapse even more. If that is the case for the guys that are listening and you just ruined your biggest streak, that the thing you need to do is learn from the relapse. Ask yourself, what led up to it? Why did that happen? What was I thinking and feeling before the relapse? What was I thinking and feeling during the relapse? So what specifically was the porn making you feel? And then what can you do to prevent it from happening in the future? And then also, what can you do to mimic the feelings that porn was making you feel in the real world, so that you don't have to search it out artificially? So that's the nuance with the streak tracker. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't.
Okay. This is interesting, because I was going to ask you, the last question I had for you was about your 31-day quit porn mastery program, which I wanted you to tell everybody about, but it sounds like partly what you were just saying is related to that. No?
Yes. So I work with men one-on-one with my 31-day quit porn mastery program. If you're interested, go to enroll.quitpornstrategies.com. Take a look, hit the big green button, apply to work with me. But the way the program is structured, the reason it's 31 days, the reason it's 31 days is because I've worked with men and they no longer need me after 31 days. It is a program where you're going to have access to all of my quit porn strategies, all of my material. It's going to walk you through the why you're addicted, and it's going to walk you through what you need to do to end your addiction in a healthy way by turning to real life alternatives. It's going to teach you how to deal with your emotions. It's going to teach you how to deal with those in healthy ways, find healthy outlets. It's going to teach you emotional control. It'll help with impulsivity, because that's another problem with all addictions is at the end of the day, there will be times that you don't even remember the process leading up to the point where you watched porn because it's an impulse. So I'll help you regain your control over your impulsive desire. I'll help you break down the habits that are leading up to porn, because people will think, oh, I watch porn because I saw an attractive woman on Instagram. Well, no, the problem is you got on Instagram when you were stressed after a long day and then you wanted to relax, you wanted to wind down, you were still stressed, you didn't deal with that stress, and then you saw an image, and then your addict brain grabbed onto that image and said, oh, we're stressed, let's watch porn so we no longer feel stressed, and then you've watched porn. It's never the image, it's always the underlying emotion. So my program helps men understand that, and that's just the program material. Outside of the material, you're also going to have 31 days of accountability and daily check-ins from yours truly, where I will be reaching out to you multiple times throughout the day. I like to tell guys I'm going to be a bit of the needy girlfriend, and the fact that you're probably going to get double texted and or triple texted from me if I don't hear back from you. And the reason being is because I know just how important accountability is in those moments, because I remember I had accountability partners back in the day, and the two biggest problems were my accountability partners were either other men who were struggling to quit porn, so they could not give me actionable, applicable advice that actually works, or they were older men who had never been addicted to porn and they did not know what it was like. What would happen when my accountability partners were fellow addicts is they would not reach out to me and ask me how I was doing, and I would not reach out to them when I know I needed to. So I never expect my clients to reach out to me when they need to, because A, their brain is not wired to do that, and B, the shame is so intense that they feel that way that they're just not even going to want to do it. So I'm always reaching out, especially in the mornings and the afternoon, and then again in the evenings. When we know that you're most likely to relapse is when you are most likely to get a message from me. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to ask you straight up, how have your urges been? How are you feeling? What's your energy like? Have you relapsed recently? We cut straight to it. I tell guys, we hit the ground running. We hit the ground running and we hit the ground hard. So outside of the program, the 31 days of accountability and daily check-ins from yours truly, we're also going to meet on Zoom one time per week, 4 times total, for 1 hour. So 4 1-hour-long Zoom calls where we dive into the nitty-gritty of what's working, what's not working, and what do we need to do to take my quit porn strategies that are universally applicable time, they're proven, they're effective, but because everyone's addiction is different, what do we need to do to take my quit porn strategies and apply them to your specific situation? So this is when you get into the nuance. Well, can you quit porn on your own? Yeah, absolutely. I quit porn on my own, but it took forever. I've helped men quit porn in 30 days or less. Otherwise, my program would not be 31 days. Because at the end of the day, you can Google how to quit porn all you want, but the advice has to be applicable across the board. When you ask me what to do, we're going to take your unique situation, your circumstances, and your current state of being into consideration, and I'm going to tailor those strategies for you so they're guaranteed to work. So that is the 31-day Quit Porn Mastery Program, sort of, kind of summarized.
Love it, David. Love it. And you're the first coach I've heard who does what I do in terms of connecting with people via texting in between sessions. I haven't heard anybody. I thought I was the only one who did that. Because to me, it's like, how could you possibly succeed at something just talking, once a week and that's it? I have to know what's happening in between or it's not going to be helpful.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal.
Accountability is huge. If you're interested in a coach and they do not offer any kind of frequent accountability, then you probably should run the other way.
Agreed. I have to say, I agree. I remember when I first said I was going to do that and people were like, are you sure you want to do that? And I said, there's no other way to do it. Yeah.
It's a little bit more work. It's a little bit more strenuous on our end as the coach, because we have to keep our emotional well-being into consideration as well. But at the end of the day, we want to help people, and
Yeah.
we got to help them throughout their day, as
Amen.
not just once a week.
Amen. Oh my God, love it. So glad to hear that you do that. Well, that sounds awesome, David. That really is great. So tell everybody once again where they can find you.
Yeah, so if you want to work with me and you want to go through the 31-day Quit Porn Mastery Program, then go to enroll.quitpornstrategies.com. Once again, enroll.quitpornstrategies.com. Check out the webpage and click the big green button, fill out the application. If we're a fit to work together, we'll get on a call and I'll get you rolling. Like I said, we'll hit the ground running. If you want to check me out on Twitter, I'm currently only on Twitter, social media-wise. My handle is @KingDavidQPS. That's capital K on the King, capital D on the David, capital Q, capital P, capital S. And eventually, when I move on to other social media platforms, I will be under that exact same handle, so long as there are not other people ripping me off on those platforms.
I hear you. Awesome. David, this has been really great. I really, really, really appreciate your coming on. And it was worth waiting for someone good because, like I said, I've been wanting to do this for months and was just waiting it out. So glad to know you. And thank you for coming on and chatting with me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I had a good time. Glad we were able to have this conversation too.
Awesome. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
And that ends this hour of the Suzanne Venker Show. As always, please share this episode with at least one friend you think would enjoy it. And don't forget to leave us a review on whatever platform you're now using. Finally, the best way to reach me is Suzanne@thesuzannevenkershow.com. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great week.